welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Kaya master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And happy Monday to everybody who's listening to us, regardless of what day you are listening to us, doesn't matter. But from our perspective, it's Monday. We're enjoying Monday where we are in our various locations. And Anne-Marie, we have a guest today who not only has the kind of story we like, where we learned about all the stuff they went through to get to where they're at, but he's got another thing that goes on. He's a comedian. He's got a funny take on spirituality and source. So this is going to be fun today.
This I'm looking forward to.
It'll be good.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be good. So Justin Shaw, first of all, welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here and there and everywhere. It's the magic of the internet.
And everywhere. That's right. Yeah, we're glad to have you. First thing, though, we do need to kind of clue the audience in on what your story is. But we got create the foundation. So tell us a story.
Yeah, I've got it down to a pretty neat 10, 12 minutes, if you'll allow me to kind of ramble for a little bit.
Oh.
I've been practicing this one, but yeah, so it's because it is important. There's empathy and there's sympathy, and sympathy is hearing someone's pain, whereas empathy is feeling it with them. So it's always important to know, like, I have a lot of empathy for people and what they've gone through, because I've been through my fair share. So it kind of starts obviously in childhood. I was raised in just an emotionally suppressive household. It was, my parents were much older, and they had me later in life, and my brothers and sisters, I have them, but they were all moved out. The closest brother to me is 19 years older. It's the closest one. Wow. So they were moved out by the time I came around, and I was kind of this surprise, and my parents were, probably around the time I was born, there was kind of this big crack in the marriage, and that slowly morphed into a canyon. So dad left when I was, very young. So it was mostly just me and my mother growing up, and she had her own kind of issues. She didn't understand the concept of love. Neither did my father. It's just something they just didn't. They didn't say, they didn't express. It's just they had a very hard time with it. It's not that they didn't love me; it's that they had no idea how to express it in a healthy way. So that, and a lot of our time was spent, kind of alone. She'd kind of have her she was never abused me in any way, but she'd go into these kind of depressive episodes, and she'd spend a lot of time in her room, and that I'd spend a lot of time in my room. And so my little world became, this little world of, the TV wasn't my babysitter. It was a full-blown parent. So, it kind of turned into this little world of my world, my little pop culture world. And I had, my toys, my video games, and I had, my TV, which was at the time, I loved to laugh. That was my pain escape. And, a lot of comedians, tend to have this background of kind of tough backgrounds, and we find this escape and attach to it. It's what makes us feel good when we're not feeling so good. So, and at that time, it was a magical time for comedy. I was early 90s. I would stay up late, and when I shouldn't, in grade school, and watch Saturday Night Live, which was full of the best lineup ever, which was David Spade and Chris Farley, and Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, and Norm Macdonald, and all this lineup of just all stars. And so I would stay up and just laugh and laugh and laugh. And Jim Carrey had his movies at the time, and The Simpsons were the most funny they've ever been at that time. And there were all these amazing things that I just absolutely adored. I'd stay up watching, HBO and Eddie Murphy and Raw. I was, like 10 years old, and just hearing him cuss up a storm. But it just made me laugh so much. So I just, gravitated towards that, and found that I could, make people laugh, and I could do impersonations. And I was absorbing all this comedy that I was, all the time comedy. Like, I was just absorbing it all, and it just made me funny. So it was something that I used to make friends, and it was a great pain escape. And so, as I kind of went along with school, that's kind of how I did things. I was certainly the class clown. And, in high school, it kind of, that's when the things came in. I didn't start doing drugs and alcohol too early, but certainly around 16, that's when I kind of started being like, what is all this stuff about? So I kind of went into that and was like, oh, this is an easy pain escape. This is a really quick and fast pain escape. So, weed and alcohol then turned into harder drugs. And I went through college and I left with a degree and a nasty pill addiction from Arizona State. So, that was in the time, it's the kind of mid 2000s there, the big opiate epidemic here where they were just, handing them out like candy to everybody. And so I got really caught up in that when things got bad really fast. I've spent nights on, a couple weeks homeless and halfway houses and rehabs and jail, never long periods in jail, but a lot of 24-hour one-nighters, a lot of those, way, it was probably like 7 or 8 of those. So, and I was always able to, they'd kind of take it easy on me because I'd kind of make them laugh and be like, okay, get out of here, kind of thing. So, it's just, and that's that kind of white privilege thing. And also making them laugh. They always took it easy on me. So, I was grateful for that skill because even drunk, I was even funnier, I thought, when I was drunk or on high or something. But that led to, my late 20s. I finally went to rehab and I was like, okay, this is obviously a problem. And the way I thought about rehab at the time was, I'm just get me clean.
Jesse, I'm gonna stop you for a second here.
Yeah,
Anne-Marie,
sure.
I'm hearing a lot of lag from him. Are you hearing lag from him?
No.
You're not. You're hearing a clean presentation from him.
I think so, yeah. Well, I've noticed anyway.
Okay, I just that just means it's happening at my end. If it's only happening at my end, that means it's recording just fine. So no big deal. I just want to make sure we're getting a good recording.
Oh yeah.
So,
I want to make sure.
Go ahead.
For sure.
Go ahead with the story. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, that's
important.
important. That's important. You can butt in any time for anything if you want to. I know it's fine, but that's important. Yeah. So yeah, the rehab. That's it. So that was. The way I understood it was just, I'm struggling because I'm going through these withdrawals and I can't stop using drugs because I'm going through these withdrawals, and just get me clean. I just need to be put away and I'll be clean. And then I won't want to use drugs anymore. Like this whole spiritual thing, you can keep that. I don't know anything about that and I don't need it. So I went to rehab and surprisingly, I lasted 3 months after rehab. I'm actually shocked I even lasted that long. But somehow I got through 3 months but again, that I'm back to square one. And it's like, okay, so maybe I don't know everything. It's crazy. At 26, I didn't know everything. So I went back. I kind of struggled for a couple of years, but went back late 20s, and now it's like, okay, I'm ready to stop. What do you got? Like this whole spiritual thing. Obviously, I was wrong. I admit it, and so I kind of went to a faith-based treatment center, and I started embracing the spiritual aspect. I started embracing the AA thing. I didn't want anything to do with that before, but so that all goes very well together, those two things, because AA is essentially just kind of disguised Christianity. It's kind of the foundation it's built on is kind of this religious, Bible-based foundation. So they go very well together. So I was doing the two of those, and that worked fine until it didn't. And I found it to be even more destructive than it was helpful, especially the Christianity aspect. I think AA, because it's off of that, it's not necessarily destructive, but it's very disempowering because religion, it tends to want to hold people down. And so these are just my opinions. I talk because this is my story. So I found it to be, I found the Christianity thing to be like this beautiful mansion, right? This mansion, I first got into this mansion, and there's like 17 bedrooms in this mansion. It's, bathrooms, and, it's got, a pool and a game room, and it's got a bowling alley in it. And life is really great inside the mansion for a while. And then you're in the mansion for long, and then you realize that the deal with living in the mansion is you can't leave the mansion. So this is metaphorical, obviously. And leaving the mansion being investigating other religions, and you have to be this way. If you want to be a Christian, you need to be this way, and we don't accept anything but this way. And I found that to be extremely, it just didn't work for me. It was get flustered at it. I can't think of the word right now, but and I also found this mansion is built on this cracked foundation of fear, judgment, and control. And the mansion started to crumble around me when my mother was pronounced terminally ill. So the year she took for passing, that's already traumatizing in itself. And, seeing her body dwindle away from the cancer and her mind, dementia. And so this whole year process is very horrible. But what made it a million times worse was that I thought she was going to hell because she wasn't a Christian. She didn't go to church. She didn't talk about it. She didn't like any of that stuff. And so therefore I was taught that she's going to hell. So every time I saw her, it was like traumatizing and horrible. And I thought she was eternally damned. And no pastor would tell me different. They wouldn't say she was going to hell, or they wouldn't say she wasn't. It's just was like, and so so, they're just like, well, try to, convert her before she dies and all this bullshit. Just like, and that was it. Right. So she passed and I was really struggling real bad because I had relapsed at that time. Because, AA and Christianity sure wasn't cutting it for me. It was making it much, much worse. So I decided to replace my pastor with a shaman. And that's when things really changed for me. He's taught me how to meditate and, all these things that you're not supposed to do outside of the mansion. The mansion is death and destruction. It's a zombie apocalypse outside the mansion. Well, it turns out it's beautiful out there and I'll never go back in. So, he taught me how to meditate. He taught me about opening my mind and questioning beliefs that I held so true about hell and all these things that I was holding true and limiting beliefs from childhood. And he worked my subconscious and exposed my shadow, which is part of, the book and everything is shadow work and exposed all these things. And so I started doing this. And one day I came back from the gym. I wasn't even meditating at the time, although I'd been meditating for 2 or 3 months daily. And I had what can only be explained as a bliss attack. It was a bliss attack. And it was like a panic attack if you replace panic with love. And it was 3 hours on my bed. It was like, I call it my near life experience because it wasn't a near death experience. I hadn't died. I was even close to death, but it was like, I wasn't in heaven or anything, or like I was not out of my body in any way. I was in my body on my bed, but it was like I had been emotionally taken to the other side, and this was just pure blissful love. And during this time, I'm getting these downloads from the universe and seeing things for what they really are, this kind of illusionary nature to the reality. And all these things came to me. And so, that moment changed everything. And I've had several of those since then. I don't know when they come. I had one just a couple weeks ago. I can't force them to come or get them. I understand what they are now that I've really researched into it. And I connected to something that source energy. It is the unified field. It is the quantum field. It is, it is everything. And explaining source energy to someone is like explaining water to a fish, which, a fish doesn't understand like the concept of water. Like you just surrounds you, you swim because of it, you breathe. It's everything what you are is because of water. And so once you see the water, you want to tell other fish about the water. And so that was now my mission. It was like, I got to tell everybody else about the water because like nobody knows. And because in that moment, it was like I had been fished from a pond. It was like I had lived my whole life in a pond and I had been fished out of it. And to see like all this amazing stuff, like this whole other world I didn't know about, it just got yanked out of my pond. It's like, oh my God, there's oceans and land and there's this whole other experience going on that I didn't know about. It was incredible. It was like I'd been on airplane mode my whole life. A phone perpetually in airplane mode is not living up to its potential. So, and I still struggled for a couple of years going back and forth, but then I had, I had a couple other nasty traumas happen and brought me to my knees, and I moved to Sedona, and that's when I got the bliss attack download for the direction of my life and where it's supposed to go in this book, which I call Sourcery 101. It's a map. It's a blueprint for how to show others how to have their own bliss attack. And that's what I was given, this kind of map, this blueprint. And, I'd been taking so long in AA, what came to me instead of, 12 steps, like, well, moving forward is good, but moving up is better. So 13 rungs. Because, a bird has a better perspective on things than a worm. So it just, and that kind of came, and 13 for a very specific reason, because it's questioning those limiting beliefs. You know, we're told 13 is a bad number. It's an unlucky number, and none of that's true. It's actually a very divine number. And in tarot, it means death, rebirth, and transformation. It's a very lucky and special number. So immediately I want people to start questioning what they believe with that, the number 13, and then the 13 rungs. And so that is what completely changed my life. So that's and a little bit over. It was 13 minutes, but yeah, that's really where, and that's got what me in the direction I'm going. I skipped over some things, but you know, the comedy portion of it and everything, but you know, trying to do
no, that's good. And I'm glad that you told the story.
Yeah, that's what happened.
I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to duck out from it to try to clear up my browser, because I'm still getting the delays here. You guys are hearing it all clear, and that's great. That means it's being recorded right, but I'm getting delays here. So I'm going to duck out of the browser, come back in while you guys are carrying on the conversation. So I'll get started with asking the question. Amory, I'll probably be back before you have to ask another question, but just in case, you can be ready. But what I wanted you to touch on, Justin, was a theme that we experience a lot here on the program, which is people go through these, we call them the crash and burn moments. And you sounds like a few of them actually.
Yeah.
And then they come out the other side, and the almost uniform experience that they take away from it is they never want to go through it again, but it's the best thing that ever happened to them. I'm curious, is that true for you as well?
Yes, it most definitely is true. And you know, you look back at these things, and it's pretty incredible how it all happened. And no, I wouldn't change anything. It gives you a certain amount of depth, you know, like it's when you go through stuff like that, you have that empathy. It creates empathy. If I didn't go through all the stuff I went through, losing people and losing, you know, I went through a period of losing my mother. I lost my sister. I lost a childhood friend. I had an ex at the time who took off, went on vacation to see her family in Boston, and then just never came back and cut me out, like changed her phone number and stopped answering emails. So I have a 6-month-old son who was with her, and I haven't seen him in 3 years. So, you know, these things happen to people, and and they happen to good people. And so, you know, I may have done my fair share, but it's, you know, there's at heart, I'm definitely there. And it's not necessarily something that, you know, there are warnings that can come in, and there was a warning, especially with her, that I didn't abide. I could have, you know, gone around this whole thing, and I didn't listen to my intuition. And so there is a force that will avoid us around certain things that we don't necessarily have to go through. But if we go through them, it will, you know, it's a bit like Source is a bit like the GPS on, you know, Apple or Google. You know, you've got this point A to point B, and you've got the direct line there. Well, it's up to us. We can choose the route that's there, and by listening to that intuitive, listening to the heart. A Source will even tell us when there's like speed bumps and road traps and police in the way, or, you know, but if we make a wrong turn, it's just like that. The Source will recalculate. You know how it does that? It will recalculate the route. And so, you know, it's safe to know that even when we aren't listening, that, you know, it will recalculate the route and still get us there. But one of the things I say in the book is intuition training, and how to avoid there are things that we can avoid. And so, you know, the easier, softer, straightforward way is the way I'm on now, because now I realize how to listen to that, how to tune into the heart, mind-heart coherence, and, you know, become one with the universe, and it will just guide. Like I hear the voice, and it's my higher self. It's that self outside of this simulation here. It's, you know, you connect with that. Now you're a player character. Now it's free will. Now you're in charge of everything you're doing, but you need to be in touch with that higher self. But without going through what I've been through, it was necessary. I mean, good things will still come out of crap, and you know, the rose grows from the pot of dirt, right? Like, so, you know, the only way a seed is going to grow is when you surround it in darkness, and a little bit of shit doesn't hurt either, right? You know, like a little bit of fertilizer in there, it helps it grow. So, you know, that's the same thing, and I wouldn't change any of it. No.
Yeah. Emery, I'm still getting lag at my end. So if it comes a point where
you're getting it,
be ready to just jump right in.
Yeah, no, I'm getting
Because
it.
the lag is really
Okay.
bad for me. I'm glad you guys are getting a nice clear signal, and that means we're getting a good recording out of it. But it's just not working at my end very well. So be ready to jump in whenever you see me just kind of freezing up. Just don't wait for me.
No problem. And I think that's really good about that you mentioned about your intuition, because I think it's something I definitely had really strong as a child, and then I kind of switched off for a long time. So it's like building that muscle back, isn't it? And that strength of trusting that intuition, and you know when things are right and when things are wrong.
I can speak on that a little bit. It's, there's all children are locked in to source energy. And what happens is we start growing these beliefs, and this is what girls do. This is what boys do. This is what black people do. This is what white people do. This is, all these things. And it's kind of, that's when airplane mode gets turned on, is by society. And they don't encourage, the imagination, or, no one has an understanding of this force, and that kids need to stay off airplane mode. So there's a rung. I don't really call them chapters, they're like sections of the book, but one of the rungs is instinct versus intuition. And this is really important for people to understand. You'd love this. So these tend to be used interchangeably, and that's not correct. They're very different things. Instinct is the fear-based kind of feeling. And it's always based in fear, and we do need it, but we don't need it very often anymore. So instinct, and it can be turned up. Instinct is something that is so rarely used anymore. It was very important. When we were running from tigers and lions, and we had to watch out for bears in cave and mountain lions. It was important then. We don't need it so much now, because now it's like the coworkers and in-laws have become the bears and lions. And so that's turning it. And that's not true. That's just doing us, it's like pushing the gas and the brake at the same time. And it's really bad for your car, and it's just as bad for you. And so, the instinct, I like to say like this, it's like if you're walking home from work and there's a car coming towards you, and all of a sudden you see someone hang out the window with a gun pointed out and start shooting. Well, this is an instinctual moment. You don't need to tune into your heart and wonder what to do at that time, because this is time to duck, hide, run, get out. This is a safety issue. This is not time to tune into the force. It's time to save your life. And so that if that happens, you jump into a bush, and okay, you've avoided a scary situation. Well, now, on your way back home to work, now every car looks like a threat. Now you're looking at every car, thinking that there's a gun hanging out, and every day you have a hard time. You're dreading walking home from work because you're thinking about that gun incident, and then you get home and you never want to leave because you haven't processed that trauma correctly. And so now your instinct has been turned up into overdrive, and we have a society of people living with instinct on overdrive. And the way to turn it back is to tune into the intuition. And when I say in the book, like, to train, you can over 30 days, if you get in contact enough, it's really easy to do, very easy. I can go over it. It's, you just, all it takes is 5 kind of deep breaths. I say 4, 5, 6 breathing, 5 of those. So in for 4, hold for 5, out for 6. You do 5 of those. Your mind is now clear, because it's very important when you're trying to get in touch with your higher self, your mind be clear. Otherwise it's going to be staticky. So that is a surefire way. It's probably 2 minutes worth of breathing that way. And then you ask a question, and you put your hand on your heart first, because that's where you want the answer coming from. That's your intuition. The mind thinks, but the heart knows. And so you put your hand on your heart, and you want your answer coming from here, and you ask your question. And you have to understand the difference between the yes and no's. So you have to kind of start with asking. I go over this in the book, but you have to go and understand what your yes feels like and what your no feels like. Always ask closed-ended questions. And so once you know what your yes and no's ask it, so you ask questions that the answer is no. You ask questions the answer is yes, and so you get a feel for it. For me, it's like it's not audible, but it's like I see the word in my mind. And so you ask a question that, you'd like an answer to, and you can start with really mundane things. Like, should I, go to this movie tonight? Should I call this person? Just really day-to-day stuff, to get a sense for it. and it'll tell you when you ask the question with your hand on your heart. Before you finish the question, you'll have the answer, and that's the answer that is best for you. The problem is everyone always wants to run that answer into the mind. That's just like, is that right? Is that correct? Should I do that? I don't know if I trust. And so that's where everyone gets caught up. But that answer is always the best answer for you. And so you have to learn to trust it, and it will guide you to the best. No more recalculating. That's it. That's how you get, like, you stop the recalculating routes. There's so many people that have been recalculated. Well, they're taking forever to get to this endpoint, but enough of that. Like, if you tune into that heart-centered moment and you start asking questions that are really important, it's going to tell you the best. And then you got to trust, and then you got to move forward, and you got to trust. So that is how to start building that intuition, which is it should be taught in schools. It should be the number one thing that we teach. It should be like right away. We should be teaching that to kids. And yet I just learned it 2 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever. And I had gone my whole life without knowing the most important thing I could possibly know. So, and that's society for you. It's just that's just the way it is. So you have to find it, because I think, you can get in conspiracy and stuff, the people at the top trying to oppress the people. And there is a little bit of that, but obviously something is happening to where we're not teaching this. So it's just, that's really important.
Yeah. And what you're describing, I mean, it's not just that. There are a lot of different things that I'm sure people could point to, like, oh yeah, we really should be teaching that in school. There's a whole bunch of those.
Oh yeah.
Certainly would be near the top. One thing I am curious about, though, because I mean, you've kind of indirectly touched on it, but you haven't really brought in directly. Tie in comedy to this. How does comedy fit into what you've been talking about?
Yeah. So I was a stand-up comedian I was a very short career. I moved to LA. That's when things got really bad, was when I was doing stand-up comedy, like really bad. That's when I was at my worst, is when I was kind of doing stand-up comedy. And, as much as I loved it, and it made me feel good. And, but it was something that the scene was just not healthy. It was just not. So when I got sober, I tried to, and realized I couldn't do, like, I didn't want to be around alcohol. I didn't want to be around, people that, possible drugs. I didn't want to, go on stage at 10 o'clock at night with it, so I kind of just dropped it for a while. And, when this whole awakening happened, I realized that I could incorporate the two things. And so the book itself is hilarious. I mean, the stories I tell in it, and the jokes I tell, and all my material, like, for years that I've written down, is all incorporated into the books. And so it's like learning while laughing. It's laugh, think, feel. And in that is growth. So the book is just really funny. And like I was kind of going over earlier, I would love to do, I'm just getting started on this. I have a 5-year plan, and we're not even at year 1, but I would love to do, like, stand-up shows. But again, there's no clear path for me. So I'm creating my own path, because I can't get up to a stand-up, crowd that's, at 10 o'clock at night, that's half drunk. And then I want to start with a meditation. Like, I'll be booed off the stage. Like, I'll have tomatoes thrown at me or something. So, so it's something new, and it's something I have to, kind of think about, and my starting point, and I'm just allowing things to unfold. If you go up to a flower that hasn't, blossomed yet, and you try to peel back, you're going to kill it. So part of this is just, and in life in general, I have found, just let things unfold, stop forcing. And so that's kind of where the whole comedy thing has come in. But and I recorded the audio version of the book too. It's very funny. I can do different voices and stuff in it, and the jokes I tell, it's consistently funny throughout the whole book, but it's also deep. And I tuned into that field that, there's the field, the unified field it's the field of information that everything that ever was and everything that ever will be is in the field. This is where, how does someone come up with such a, brilliant song? Well, it was in the field. They tuned into it, and it just came out. So that's where this book came from. It came from the field. And so, if you get into that, nothing is really original, when you kind of look at it that way, but it is someone that tuned into that field, and this information then got filtered through my subconscious, through my experiences, through my humor. And so this this ancient wisdom. It's been around since the beginning of time. So it filtered through me, and that's what came out. And so it's very fun to be able to work in humor and, and make the book very, very funny. And it kind of speaks to, I really think it speaks to younger men, because I think younger men are really struggling. And I think they're struggling with this kind of toxic masculinity thing that, is, kind of rampant now. It's, there's kind of this anti-feminine, feminine movement, and it's just really sad, and it's sad to see. And so I kind of want to get out there to younger guys and say, embracing your feminine side doesn't mean you lose masculinity. I still yell at the TV when the Suns and Cardinals are losing. That's my favorite movie is still Fight Club. Wu-Tang Clan and Rage Against the Machine are still on, on constant loop in my phone. You don't have to lose any masculinity by embracing femininity. You lose those toxic traits that are holding guys back. So how you speak, Jesus was such an effective spiritual teacher because he spoke the language of the times, and he took this same energy that I'm talking about and was able to put it in parables and metaphors that people understood. Well, now, it's technology metaphors, it's pop culture parables, and it's humor. And that's the language of these times. So I'm doing the same thing. And we all have a little Jesus in us. And I'm just doing my best impersonation.
I love that. And I think because, there is laughter therapy out there. And laughter is just so good for the soul, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to give that to other people. So you mentioned your 5-year plan. Well, what's in that 5-year plan then?
Well, I got the end result in the beginning, and the rest of it is supposed to unfold. So, I recently self-published the book because I was a complete ghost online. Like I purposely, I deleted all forms of social media in 2020. It was extremely toxic. I just couldn't stand social media anymore. So I just deleted everything. I didn't have any of it. So I'm truly starting from absolute zero scratch, so things have to take time. And so I'm just kind of letting them unfold, and I certainly have my end. But I love any good movie that starts at the end and then fills everything else. I love those kind of movies. So I have my end result and at my 5-year plan, and then I'm just letting everything fill in itself without having real expectations. Having hope and expectations are kind of different things. And, expectation tends to be the first step towards resentment. So it's important to not necessarily expect things to unfold the way I'm always wanting them to. I have my end result. I'm attached to the energy of that end result. I do it every day in meditation, and then just let things happen. So I finally have, there's at least now when you Google me, like there's at least stuff that comes up. So I've sent the next book to publishers and literary agents. I just did that recently. It was like a week or two ago. Maybe something comes of that. I'll probably reach out to kind of more unity churches, maybe see if they want me to come on, maybe do like a set, I guess. I'm just trying to think of stuff to kind of come in the meantime, because I don't have like, here's where I need to be at year 1. Here's where I need to be at year 2. I just have where I need to be at year 5. So everything else is just kind of filling it in and just letting it unfold. And so that's what I'm doing. No expectations, just letting things unfold.
You basically do what you do in meditation. You go into that space, and then you just let what comes in, and then just trust.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
And that's the journey.
Yep.
Well, the trusting is also a tricky piece, because I loved what you were talking about. I was missing half of it, so I ended up literally clearing out my entire cache. I've been trusting the cache all this time and found it was what was screwing me up. I can hear you guys clearly now. So
Yay.
The good news is we finally got there.
Well, that's good.
The bad news is we had to go through the crash and burn in order to get there.
Yeah. Hey, we were just talking about that.
Right. And I was, by the way, I decided to do the kill the cache part because you were talking about one of my favorite topics to talk about, and I was saying, no, I want to be a part of this conversation. This is like really important stuff. Because you were talking about how there's a very significant movement today, particularly among the young, but it's also among older men too, to basically be anti-feminine. I mean,
Mhm.
that's not the way they would perceive it, but that's certainly the way I perceive it. And I was really glad to hear you saying that too. So I just wanted to return to that for a moment. Can you just talk for a second about some of the stuff that you've seen that along that line?
Yeah, it's just kind of this whole, like, with the influencers that are just really kind of nasty people, and people thinking that they're okay, like, and they're good to follow. And they
Mhm.
had that adolescence show on Netflix, and it's just there just seems to be this wave of guys that are just have this hate in their hearts for women in particular. And it's just really sad, because I think
Mhm.
women should rule the world. I mean, if I have a company, I'm going to let women run it, because I they make decisions with their heart, and it's
Boy, that's such a
extremely.
key point right there. I love
Yeah,
that one right there.
yeah,
Right there.
yeah.
And by the way, let me also be clear. We're not talking all women and all men. I mean, I know women who
No,
don't make decisions from their hearts. I know
no.
men who do make decisions from their hearts.
Oh
But
yeah,
I
no.
understand what you're saying. There's that tendency that goes
It's
on.
the majority. I'm talking about the majority.
Right.
And what that majority number is that 51% or is it 80%? I don't know, but it is
I don't know.
definitely the majority.
Yeah.
So whatever that number is the majority of men are, make, all about the mind, and the majority of women make all about the heart, and there's always outliers, of course. But yeah, that's why I think, yeah, women should rule the world, because we'd have a much happier. We'd talk things out. There'd be no wars. Like, it's just this, dick measuring contest with guys. Like, it's just ridiculous. It's just insane. It's just like, it's so pathetic. It's just so pathetic. I just see the leaders of these countries, of which ours is one of them, that just has these just nasty, toxic, guys that are just full of ego, and just the ego, and just the ego. And it's so sad. They're just sad people. And that's the way I look at it. They don't anger me any. It's just, there's a glass partition. I see this world that's happening around me, but I don't participate in it. There's like a glass partition in between my world and this exterior world. I don't let it mix with my world.
Right.
And that's what people need to start doing better, is having this glass partition, and like, yes, no, I don't agree with that. But the thing is, they don't have that. And then it's like, I don't agree with that. Now I'm angry. Now I'm pissed off. And now I'm yelling at my kids because I hate the president. And that's a very real situation. And so you have to keep the glass partition there. It's that this is a world I'm not going to, I don't agree with, but I'm not going to partake in it. And just, I'm going to live my life, and I see it going on, but it's not my world.
I hear
And
you.
so it's important to have that. Otherwise you let the world into you.
Yeah.
And that's it's like the news. I can't change anything on the news, but the news can sure change me. So, and that's what they just onslaught of just fear and anger and it's very addicting emotions. It's like they throw that out, and then you want to watch more, and you get that fear. And like, that's why horror movies are so, that's the number one producer of movies is horror movies, because people like that. It doesn't feel good to feel fear, but at the same time it does. It's a very addicting emotion. And so fear and anger, and it's just pumped through that. So
I'm loving that you're talking about this. I'm loving that you're choosing to be a voice on this subject. And one of the reasons for that is I'm 3 years divorced after a 23-year marriage. So I was kind of reinserted back into the single men society that I'd been out of for quite some time. It was quite an eye opener, I can tell you. One of the things I've discovered is not only does that significant segment exist, there's also I won't necessarily say they're majority, although I think they might be. There is a silent majority of men that won't speak up on this because they're afraid of being shot down by that crew.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And the way I've discovered that is I'm not afraid of being shot down. So, I'll get into the fray, and I'll get confronted by, some alpha male or something like that. And I'll just stand up to him. I'll just, I won't put up with it. I won't go alpha on him, but I'll be myself. I'll push my own thing and say, you know what? Hey, I think it's good to have feelings. I think it's good to have a connection to your heart and all this kind of stuff.
They just need a hug. Just give them a hug. They won't know what to do. It'll just completely fluster them. And it'll be like more effective than a punch in the face. Is just
absolutely,
just a big hug.
Yeah.
It's just be like, oh, I don't want any part of this.
But what I've observed is that the silent majority start to become vocal because they see somebody else is doing it. And so it makes it okay to do it. That's why I think it's so great that you're speaking out in this way, because there are going to be people who are going to be influenced by you, seeing what you're saying, and they're going to say, okay, I feel like I can be who I am. I don't have to go that other route now.
Yeah,
that's really
it's important. Yeah, it really is, and it's important to kind of go against the grain a little bit. And the whole thing, it's like, we're following the masses, and it's like, well, sometimes the M is silent, and like, 98% of society will spend 98% of their free time on shit that does not matter. So it's like, who are we following here? Like, this is the masses, like, so it's, that's, you got to start thinking for yourself. It's goats over sheep. That's another rung. So it's, the goats being, and sheep is, in the religious world, it's they the pastors will say that my flock, and openly call people sheep, which which is an insult to me now, but it's just, sheep they need an instructor. They don't think for themselves. You got to tell them what to do, and they just do things. And so that's sheep. And so your pastor will openly talk about sheep. Well, being a sheep is not a good thing. Everyone blames Hitler for the Holocaust. It was his sheep that are just as much to blame, because if no one listened to him, it would have never happened. So, being a sheep is not a good thing. So I always say, like, goats over sheep, which the goat animal, first of all, is a very unhurtable kind of, animal that does its own thing, first off. But goat has also turned into this term, greatest of all time.
Yeah.
so I use that acronym. And so I like that the animal also is this kind of unhurtable, do its own thing. But, anyone that's done something great, has that mindset of not listening to other people. If they listened to other people, they would have never done anything great. So, it's never to have like an ego over, being, I'm the greatest. It's like, it's a quiet confidence. It's just like, no,
and I'll be honest, I'm actually influenced by the cartoonist Gary Larson, who did The Far Side.
Yeah, my dad used to read that. I should go back and read those. I'd like them more now. I read them as a kid. I was like, what is this? This is 8 years old. Like, this isn't funny. Like, what is this?
Well, Gary had a particular cartoon that was a field full of sheep. And in the middle of the field full of sheep, there's one sheep that stands up on his hind legs and yells out, "I gotta be me!" And
that's awesome. That's hilarious. That's great. Yep, that is.
Which goes to prove, even if you're a sheep, you can still break out. You can be a sheep, and you can say, "Hey, I'm going to be a unique sheep."
But that's funny, because they say the black sheep is the bad thing, and actually.
It's like a goat living amongst sheep. So you could consider, like, it's a goat that's been raised around sheep. Consider yourself like it's not a sheep standing up. It's a goat realizing it's a goat. Like, it's like, oh, I've been around sheep my whole life. Like, oh, that's why I think I'm a sheep, because I've been raised by sheep. But you look in the mirror and you're like, oh no, I'm a goat. This isn't for me. This isn't the life for me. I'll see you later. I'm gonna go do goat things.
I think Hans Christian Andersen did the whole thing about the ugly duckling. That's kind of what we're describing here.
Yeah. It's something. Think for yourself, please.
And I think we're actually in an era where people are kind of faced with that. I mean, I call it the era of discernment. We're learning how to be discerning in ways that we've never had to learn to be discerning before, particularly because of what's in news media, what's in online, in the technology, and all that kind of stuff. We're being presented with this is one of the valuable terms that have come from the other side: fake news. We're being presented with fake news all the time. And that, never mind that they're among those who are, presenting the most fake news, but nevertheless, there's a whole bunch of fake news out there, and we're actually having to discern, okay, what's the real thing from what's the fake thing? And
it's actually a good thing.
Is it really worth paying attention to this stuff in the first place? And we're having to make all these discernments that we never really made before. So I think of it as a healthy time, because we're actually growing in this way.
Oh yeah, with the AI and the deep fake videos, and it's like what we're seeing may not be reality, and that right there can be really empowering, and you start to see, well, what else around me may not be absolutely true, and what's so it's kind of, it's that starting of awakening, and you start, the discernment is crucial, and it's just like it, because it's full of it, where it's everywhere, and that's a big part of awakening, is having that discernment. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And along with that, there's a a kind of a standard way of describing that I like to use about the tendencies that I'm seeing. I'm seeing that we're in this era of discernment, but I also see this as being in an era of victimhood and blame. In other words, people identifying with their own victimhood in some way, finding some way to blame somebody else for it, and not doing the work within.
Yep.
And it's a
that's easy to
pretty
do.
prevalent cycle, you know? What's cool to me isn't so much that that's happening, because obviously that's kind of a painful cycle to be in, but what's cool to me is seeing how many people are now actually taking steps to move out of it. I'm not saying the vast majority are doing that, but there are a significant minority of people who are taking steps to work on themselves, to do the inner development, and not just women too, men. There are men who are doing the same thing, you know. So it's both genders, and or even the cross genders. I don't care which gender you're talking about, but or it may be a third or a fourth gender. It doesn't make any difference. They're all there are examples in all of the segments of society of people who are taking steps. That excites me on a number of different levels, but it also makes me wonder from a comedic viewpoint, how can you bring comedy into that? Because the thing I like about comedy is like a lens that focuses in on something. You know, when the comedian is talking about something, they're focusing on one little piece of society, usually something that they're twisting around a little bit and having fun with and that kind of thing. But it also brings a lens of attention. It brings attention to it. So it makes me wonder, how can you, I mean, you're the comedian. How do you bring attention to this positive trend that's going on?
Well, it's because there's a lot of absurdities, and the comedic lens is to kind of point out the absurdities, and something ends up rings true and is funny usually because it's true. So it's just getting to the absurdity of it all and pointing out truths. I mean, things become funny, and people will laugh at things I say because they hit home and they're like true. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a joke. I can just point something out that's blatantly obvious that no one has looked at, and people will laugh at it.
Yeah, true.
And so, it's just pointing out these things and making people more aware that life is not maybe what it seems, and there's a lot of illusionary nature to things going on right now, and maybe there's more illusion than we even know. And we're constantly being deceived, and it's just really important for people to understand and to have that discernment. It's just like I used to look at the pyramids are a great example for me. Like growing up, I always saw pictures of the pyramids in books and TV shows, and all this. You see the picture of the pyramids and the Sphinx and everything. It's just this majestic background of it's just the desert and miles of desert and this beautiful sand. And so the assumption then is that it's 2 hours away from society, and you got to take it's maybe a 2-day ride by camel to get out to the pyramids, right? Because that's the illusion they present. Well, if they that they take it all from the west side. If they took a picture from the east side, you'd see the pyramids are like 1,800 yards from a goddamn KFC, and that's the illusion that I saw a picture from the other side, and I was shocked. I was like, what? It's that close to the city? Like, I mean, you can see a Taco Bell. Like it's just like, it's, that kind of illusionary thing. And we're always being presented with that. So like the first time I saw that, I was just shocked. And so that's one of the things. It's out there. It's everywhere.
It's natural comedy.
Yeah, it is. And it's just pointing out absurdities like that. It's just, it's funny. It's funny.
It's true. And you're right. There are a lot of opportunities to focus in on things like that. Here in the U.S., of course, we're experiencing a traumatic time for many people in terms of a political divide. So I find myself with people that I know on both sides of the divide, just trying to help them calm their emotional tie to it. Because, I mean, you learn pretty quickly. You don't get into a debate. Don't do that. No, it doesn't matter which side you're on. Just don't get into a debate. But at least try to find some way to just bring the emotion down a little bit. And one of my favorite ways, I have a background in political science. That was my degree in college. So I know American political history really well. So I can draw on a lot of stuff. So I like to pick apart little pieces of American history and share it with the person that I'm trying to calm down. One of my favorite ones is to tell the story of how George Washington ran for office the very first time as a young man. It was like one of his first years in the colonies. And for those who don't know, Washington is actually gentry. He was landed gentry. He was granted his land space by the King of England. He as landed gentry, he was also indirectly related to the king. I mean, if you really trace it out far enough, he was probably like 35 spaces away from being the king. It was that kind of a thing. But he emigrated to America, and when he got here as a young man, he figured, well, okay, I should take my place in society. So he put himself up for a local office, and I don't remember what the name of the office was, but it was a really, really unimportant office. I mean, it had almost no power, it had no prestige or anything, but it was a good starting point, he figured. I mean, we don't really have this as an office anymore, but it was like the equivalent of dog catcher. It was that level of political importance, and he lost. He lost the election. Now he thought he should win, right? This guy comes from royalty. I mean, this guy is like, the cream of English society. He should have won the election. And he found out that the reason he lost is that the local town drunk bought everybody a pint at the local pub, and so they all voted for him. And so
bad story.
So the next election, Washington bought a pint for everybody at the pub, and he won.
I'm disappointed as a Brit he didn't think about that first.
Yeah. So I mean, there's an example of, and of course, it doesn't matter whether I tell that to a Republican or a Democrat. Everybody laughs at that one.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's basically just showing the humanity of the politics as a way to bring down the emotional tension associated with the politics.
Oh, it's so bad. Yeah. And it's so divided. And so, you have to be, it's like with religion, you have to be, if you're a Democrat, you have to believe everything a Democrat believes. If you're a Republican, you have to believe everything. And there's no, there's no middle ground, which I don't identify by either. I think they're both garbage, but it's just, we're never going to get anywhere with this divide. The whole thing of unity and coming together. There is, if everyone lives a heart-centered life, there is one way, and there's one way to find out. And guess what? It's a mixture of both of them. You've both got some good ideas, and you've both got some really crappy ideas. And the thing is, everyone takes everything, and you take everything, and then it sides, and that is placed purposely by the powers that be, because they love that. They love people against each other because it keeps people in division, and it doesn't. The unity is what is where we can rise up, and they don't want that. So the American politics is ridiculous. In places like Germany, there's 11 different parties. So we've got 2. So it's absolutely ridiculous. And if you want to be a third, it's like throwing away your vote. So it's corrupt and bad, and it's not good. And yeah, it's very sad to see. But again. And it doesn't affect me, but I see it affect a lot of people, and it lets them ruin the day kind of thing, and just the day of their life. I mean, you hold on to an emotion long enough, your mood can then become your personality, and it can just become who you are. And so it's very dangerous to hold on to this kind of energy, and you're living in that, and you're watching the news, which is just, you're always watching one news or the other, and they're always on one side or the other, and they're putting forth stories and things that they want to put forth, and they're switching it in ways, and they're the news is given by entertainers, not journalists. So that's read your news, don't watch it. Don't the entertainers versus journalists. Go to someplace, everyone wants to be informed, but read your news by a respectable journalist, and stop watching it, because it's just entertainment, and it's meant to fear and anger, and it's meant to be addicting so that you keep watching it, and people do. And it's just politics. So yeah, it's a very sad state we're in, but we can overcome it. It's going to take a while.
This is like a collective crash and burn we're going through. That's really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes order can only come out of chaos. So sometimes it has to get really chaotic before and a lot of time, again, with the cracked foundation, the only way to build it, you have to start all over. You have to tear down the house, build a new foundation, and start all over. And so we're on a cracked foundation, and I'm hoping the house tumbles soon, so we can start rebuilding.
I think think people are looking and going, actually, you're not solving my problems. You're not solving my problems. Just say you're working for me, and actually, no, we've got our own power. And I think people are beginning to realize
There
that.
you go. Yeah,
And that's what
exactly.
it's all about.
And that's that path out of the crash and burn,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because that's what all the crash and burn stories have in common. The person who successfully navigates them. I mean, there are some people who don't successfully navigate them, but among those who do successfully navigate them, they found the way out by following something in their heart. They found something within themselves. That's how they found the way out. And the same thing's going to happen here too. Not everybody's going to find the way out. Not everybody's going to solve it, but those who do solve it, I think there's going to be a significant number of them. They're going to realize that it's outside. That's not the important stuff. The important stuff is here. And that's what's going to carry them through. That's what's going to make that change. So the institution may crumble, but it won't matter because of people making the positive growth within themselves. That's the way I see it anyway. Maybe I'm optimistic.
No, well, it's good to be optimistic. Is good. I mean, there's one rule, like there's really, like if we all live by the golden rule, love others as we wish to be loved, treat others how we wish to be treated, we'd be fine. It's just we get lost in all these other rules, and it's like, well, there's only one rule, and if you live by that rule, everything is going to be fine. But there's just, again, so much, and people try to lead each other and try to convince, and just, the internet and the phones, and and these are all new things. So I think we're still getting used to them. I mean, I'm older than the internet's been around. So these are new things, and we're still getting used to them, and we're kind of still, we're not using them properly, but they can be used properly. But I think we're still getting used to them. I mean, just like I did with the social media, it's like, I just like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm just deleting everything and starting all over. And like, now I have one account, it's Instagram, and it's like, I was like, okay, now I can use this responsibly. And, I get like spiritual feeds, and like the people I follow are really positive, and, and that's what the algorithm is feeding me, is like all these like positive things for the day, and funny comedians, and the algorithm's feeding me. It's like, oh, okay, this is what it's like to have a healthy relationship with social media. I'll be on it for 15 minutes a day and get my little things. And so, so it can be used for good. It's not bad. It's not bad, but a lot of people abuse it, and it's sad, but we're still getting used to it. So there's hope because it's new.
And to be honest, it's not like it originated with the internet. I mean, the stuff existed before that. One of my favorite titles, I didn't really like the book very much, but the title was wonderful. It came out before the internet, and it really summarized what we're talking about just in the title. The title was Everything I Needed to Know I Learned When I Was in Kindergarten. Yeah. Perfect title for a book, right? Now, the book itself wasn't all that fabulous, but the title was wonderful.
Yep, it's spot on. It really, and it is. And yeah, of course, it's been around since the internet. It's just the internet has accelerated things in the wrong direction, but it can accelerate things in the right direction.
Yeah,
it's just accelerated them in the wrong right now.
Well, what it does, it isn't as much that it accelerates it in the wrong direction. It accelerates it in the direction where you give your attention and your belief and your passion and all the things that are important to you. And it's a mirror. It's mirroring back to you. That's like what the algorithm is doing. It's mirroring back to you where you're coming from. And I mean, I had a relationship recently in which the person I was dating said to me that I held up a harsh mirror, and all I could think is a mirror is just a reflective device. If it's harsh, look at the person who's looking in the mirror. I mean, that's where it's coming from. It's the same thing here, right?
Reflection. The only way to change the reflection is to change. Like if you're looking in a mirror and you're frowning, well, the only way to that reflection isn't going to change until you change. You have to smile, and okay, now the reflection's smiling. It's the same
exactly. And I think that's what social media and the internet and so forth are really doing. That they're actually providing a public service to show people what they're putting out, and for the first time they're actually seeing it in real time. They never saw it in real time before.
We just need people to be more aware. That's that is the number one thing I've seen with people that suffer, is a lack of awareness. They just have to be more aware of what's going on, how social media works, how they're creating their own worlds, and this reflection aspect of it. It's awareness. And so many people are they're programs, and they're just not aware, but awareness is there.
Yep. Well, this definitely becomes an ongoing conversation. I wish we had more time for. I wish I caught the first half of the conversation. I thought I heard pieces of it as it was coming through, but I was saying, "Oh my God, I want to talk about that. Oh, I want to talk about that."
Well, you'll have to listen to the episode then.
Yeah, right. But no, this is really, really good. And we want to thank you for being on the show. We do have a few things we like to do at the end of every program, and we want to do them with you too. First and foremost, I mean, I don't know, we actually touched on the title of the book, but we should actually name the book and we should tell people where to find it and all that good stuff. So like, give us like a 2-minute promo on the book.
Yeah. So yeah, I can give it. So it's called Sourcery 101. I'm trying to make people into sorcerers, but I spell it with a U because it's about source energy. So, I think it's possible to turn someone into a frog or move the phone with your mind, but I don't know how to do that yet. So you'll have to leave that. That's good Harry Potter stuff. I don't get into that, but sorcery with a U, that's real magic. And so it's Sourcery 101, 13 rungs to higher elevation of consciousness. It is on Amazon and wherever books I believe are sold. The website is Awaken the Sorcerer, again with a U.com. And you can get the Audible. The audio is on Audible too. And it's I think it's on Spotify. It's on the website as well. And if you can't afford a book, if you don't mind reading a PDF, I will send people free books because I just want to get this stuff out there. I have no problem sending a free PDF. My email is sorcerer13@gmail.com with a U. So sorcerer, make sure it's misspelled. And then my one and only social media is the Instagram sorcerer_13 with a U. So those are the places you can find everything. And but yeah, I'll be happy to send anyone a book because it's a fun read.
That's fabulous. That's wonderful. I'm glad you gave people a way to contact you too. So Anne-Marie, fortunately, you were able to be in on the whole conversation. I missed half of it. We got all of it, right? So as usual, I'm going to count on you to not only summarize it, but summarize it for my benefit as well. So I know exactly what I missed and the parts that I was missing. So like, how are you tying it together today?
Well, Walt, you missed a great deal of analogies. I love the fish and the water and explaining that to them. I thought that was brilliant. But I think the main, I think you probably caught it, but I think the main theme for me was that whole power of connection and how it got Justin through his childhood, through his addiction, through his time in the mansion, and that. But actually, all you need to do is so simple. That breathing technique. Just close your mind, eyes. Use that intuition and just trust. And it's so simple. So just knowing you've got your own power.
That's huge.
And just laugh. It's fun at the end of the day.
And as Justin was pointing out, it's not like we lack things to laugh at. There's so
at the moment, there's a lot of crazy.
There is. Yeah. The real question is, are you willing to laugh at it? Because if you are, I mean, it doesn't take all that much. I mean, all you have to do is just notice there's a Taco Bell outside the pyramid. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So yeah, really good stuff. One other thing, Justin, we were talking a lot at the end there, particularly about the impact of the technology on people and on society. But there's also been a very positive touch to it as well, which is, like you said, this is all emerged during our lifetimes. 30 years ago, this conversation was impossible. There was just no way it was going to happen. Now it's just every day. We take it for granted. This is like, wow, this is we wouldn't even think about it anymore. Well, that's a wonderful gift that technology's been able to give us. And we have ways that we can reach out to other people that we didn't have before. I mean, social media is a way to connect with people that we care about, that are important to us, that are friends and so forth. So there's all these positive sides as well. But one thing that does happen, especially for somebody like you, who you've been through your crash and burn cycles and you've come out the other side, you've learned some stuff that you want to share with others, is you do exactly that. I mean, you wrote your book, and clearly that's one way that you're sharing with people, but you're also doing this podcast. I'm sure you're doing other podcasts, and you're doing your Instagram, and various ways of reaching out and sharing with people that you never meet, you never see, you don't really know how they're using it. And I noticed that because of that fact, we often don't realize how we're helping people because we don't know who they are, and we don't see how they're using what we gave them, and we don't see what the result was. And so we don't get the credit for it. And I thought, we should really do something about that. And I said, well, I do a podcast where I have guests on, and I'm talking right to them as they're telling these stories. So I can do that. So Justin, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in ways you didn't even know about just by sharing your story on their behalf. Thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Indeed.
Well, thank you. I love it. This is why I do it.
Yeah, I could tell. And it just all over your face. Even when the face was frozen, it was still all over your face.
Yep. Love it. Yep.
Good stuff. So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.